Hello and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. Today my guest is Jocelyn Bates, who is a soul artist. She does yoga nidra. She works with Akashic Records and human design. And today we break down the Akashic Records. I'm so excited to have met and have interviewed Jocelyn because I have spoken to so many people about this topic over the years, and I have never been able to grasp or understand what the Akashic Records are. And Jocelyn does a beautiful job of breaking this down in an understandable and digestible way. So we talk about what the Akashic Records are, how each and every person has the ability to access their own records, why we want to access the records, and so much more. I really hope that you'll enjoy this podcast. Please, if you are, take a moment to give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. And I'm going to just hop on in with my episode with Jocelyn today. Hello, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast, a place to explore possibility through mindfulness, movement, and self-discovery. Our intention is to deliver insight and inspiration while fostering conversations that are genuine, unfiltered, and deeply human. We hope you will enjoy today's episode. Hi, Jocelyn. Good morning and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you. Today we're going to talk about the Akashic Records. And you are like the fourth person I approached about Akashic Records. And you were the only person that had been able to explain it to me in a way that I was able to understand and comprehend. And I so appreciate that, because the other people that I talked to, and I talked to a lot of people over the years, when they talked about Akashic Records, I got so confused and I had no idea what they were talking about. And the more they talked, the more confused I became. So I love that we're having this conversation today and that you could break it down for like super beginners.
You know, it's interesting because it really is when you start to understand and open your mind to the Akashic Records, like it becomes limitless. And in and of that, it becomes very confusing if you're trying to kind of grasp onto one or two things.
So how would you define Akashic Records for somebody that's never even heard of those words before?
Yeah, well, some people might have heard it as the book of life. If they've read the Bible, they might have heard it as like the book of life. But it is just a dimension of pure knowledge that we access through our clair abilities. And you can access it through meditation. And I remember we were talking about this. Everyone can access their own Akashic records. The Akashic Records are this dimension of knowledge, just pure knowledge. And each of us has our own Akashic record within that library of knowledge. And that Akashic record that you have that's yours is from the time that your soul is born. So it just holds all the information from the time that your soul is born. And everything has an Akashic record that's living. Every person, every animal, every blade of grass, every block of earth, right? Everything that's living has an Akashic record. And it all is in that dimension. And when you are here and you're trying to get into the world of Akashic Records, what I was talking about before is just shifting how you think about time. When we live in a very linear space here, right? In this dimension, everything is linear, as is time. You know, it's in this horizontal line from past, present, future. But when you start looking at the Akashic Records, you have to look at it almost like it's happening all together. And I like to think of it as like a crystal ball, right? So the past, present, and the future all swirling around together at the same time. And I think that's the main thing you have to switch to understand the records. Because when you go into the records, your past lives, your future lives, your present lives, they're all happening almost simultaneously, right? All of it is happening. And people go into the Akashic Records for all kinds of things. They go in to learn about their past lives or where their future lives. And if they want to tap into that, they go in to meet the people, the ancestors from their lives, both soul life and this human life. And in that space, you go for knowledge. It's a realm of knowledge. It's a dimension of knowledge. So you go to learn. It's go to be curious. You go to create new pathways for yourself and to release things like belief systems. And because that realm of knowledge or that dimension of knowledge, right, That's what it is. When you go in there, you can actually tap into, like, so you're not just going to get, say, like a page of information about your past life.
Mm.
It depends on your clairability or what you're using to get in. So I am very clairvoyant and clairaudience. So I hear and I see, and I'm clairsentient and I feel. So when I go into the Akashic Records, and if I stumble into a past life, I feel it and I see it and I hear it. And so, like, I am in it, and that's how I'm gaining the knowledge from that past life. Does that make sense?
Yes, partially, but I want you to just
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah. And that's how I go and I get information. I can go into a future life. I could go into a relationship in this life that I have. And I experience it through my clair abilities. We are souls living in a human life. And here, our body is the conduit of both earth and spirit.
Mm.
We feel the earth through our body. We feel the spirit through our body. Our body is how we experience everything. And so when you go into the Akashic Records, you're going to be experiencing it through your body. So it may be that it's clairvoyance, that you're seeing something, that you're hearing something, that you're smelling something, that you're feeling something, right? All of that's happening. You might even like start to have, memories bubble up from other past lives, that happen, but they come up through your body. So you can even access the Akashic Records through just meditation when we settle the body, right? When we start to settle and get present into the body. You just need that intention. It's nice to have a guide the first time, but it's nice to have that intention. So with that, with a little bit of guidance and meditation, it's absolutely possible. It's not even that you're going and using your clair abilities. You're accessing the instrument of your body, which is the place where earth and spirit collide. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm a real linear thinker. And so wrapping my head around time, that part
not
is
easy.
really tricky for me. So I'm curious, like, how do you know if you're in a past or a future, and can you change your future, or is it all kind of swirling around at the same time?
Think of it as all swirling around at the same time. So if you were to go into your own records, and again, it's only knowledge, you're just tapping into knowledge of your soul's journey, right? And when you do that, when you tap into it, when you start to get visions, it's important to do it's called tunneling in. So you need to get curious, right? When you're there, you can ask questions. You can be guided. You can get really curious and jump into details. And by doing that, you get am I in a past life or am I in a future life?
Mm-hmm.
You may be in a past life, so you may experience in a past life in your Akashic Records, and you might have a few different people there. You don't know who you are. You can ask, who am I in this in this moment, right? And you can get answers from your body, which is the conduit. So you just it's called tunneling in. It's called asking the questions and narrowing your focus to what you want to learn from that life. And here's where it's important too: is before you go into your Akashic Records to have your intention. Why are you going? Why do you want to go in, right? Start to shape your journey. Think of it as a journey. And then allowing that to kind of unfold for you. So the Akashic Records can be tapped into by anyone. It's your body that's the conduit of kind of learning and taking in from the Akashic Records. You are the person guide. It is your records. When you jump into your records, you are able to guide where you're going and what you want to learn. So setting an intention is kind of important in that. Now, someone like me, I've been trained to go into other people's records. So I already tunnel in for people, but I do think there's a beautiful relationship that happens when you start to go into your own Akashic Records. You really get to see the beauty and the power of your soul. And you get to see kind of it's not like everybody, like I have some past lives that are horrendous. I never wanted to see them. They were not beautiful, nor were they powerful. But we have so many, right? And as you go in, you get to start to see the themes that are pulled through your lifetimes. And that's when it's really powerful, when you can start to see, oh my gosh, like this is a theme that's been there for a really long time and it's still in my life today. So just going back to it, the Akashic Records are just a realm of knowledge that we tap into with our body. And I know it's hard to think about time linearly because that's everything that we do is linear in this life. So you have to just kind of be like, okay, well, what if? Get a little creative in your mind and start thinking about it like as if time, past, present, and future all at once was captured in just a little like a crystal. That's fun.
Yeah. Is there a crossing over between Akashic Records and dreaming?
Yeah, you can absolutely dream in the Akashic Records. 100%. If you've ever had have you ever had a lucid dream? Lucid
I have.
dreams
It's
are
been a long time, but I have, yes.
And so when you are, especially lucid dreaming, when you have a little bit of awareness of what you're doing in your dream,
Yeah.
you can absolutely be tapped into the Akashic. Not saying you always are, but you can absolutely be tapped into the Akashic Records. So if you say you have a dream, right, that you want to understand more, you can go into your records and then open the records of that dream. And from there, you can then learn more about the dream, learn what it has to give you, what it has to offer you, what kind of wisdom is there for you, what you can learn from, and you can kind of really peel off the layers of symbolism from that dream for yourself.
So when you say that there's patterns that play out through lifetimes, why do you think that is, and how do you see that? And then are we meant to break those patterns?
I think sometimes we have things and traumas that happen in past lives that are not resolved in that life. And sometimes it takes a few lifetimes for that to get resolved. Sometimes it becomes a really deep thing and then it becomes unconscious for many, many lifetimes, but it can bubble up lifetimes later, right? Like out of nowhere. And I think that can be one cause, is being caused by trauma. I think sometimes our souls come in to learn something. The most beautiful thing about the Akashic Records, and I say that I love this idea, and this is that we are souls in a human body in each life, right? When we are not incarnated into a human life, our souls know everything. We are all knowing. We don't have the feelings that we get to feel in this world, right? So when we are incarnated, we incarnate to feel. We incarnate to experience. We incarnate to not know, to discover and explore. Because when we are back in a non-incarnated space, we're just our soul again, right? Then it's no fun. It's not the same. We don't have the same. We don't get to experiment and explore because we are all knowing in many ways. So when you have lifetimes of themes, your soul might just be fascinated with all of the experience that's happening and learning and moving from it. I'll give you an example. When I was working with my teacher, she went into my records a few times and she didn't know that I was doing what I was doing for work. I was an expressive art therapist at that time. And she goes, gosh, the first thing she goes, gosh, you've had so much sexual trauma in your past lives. She's like, you've been raped, you've been a prostitute, you've had no control, you've been abused. Like, she's like, and I'm talking lifetimes. Wow. She's like, but for some reason in this lifetime, you're not meant to be feeling it so much as witnessing it. And that's when I said, I'm an expressive art therapist for sexual trauma in teenage girls and domestic violence.
Wow.
And so it was this, but it was many, many years of experiencing and feeling. And this is supposed to be my integration year. Now that I'm not in it and feeling it, now I'm learning from it in a different way. Right. So it might be that you have all of these experiences that build and build and build, and each one gives you a different kind of piece of it. And then you have maybe an integration life where you you witness it in a different way. And then there's also, it's funny because when you start talking Akashic Records, there's a lot of times people are in something and they're supposed to be in it, right? They're so called for it. And everyone around who doesn't know their Akashic Records or anything, right? They're like, oh, you don't have to do that. You're good. Don't be sad. Don't be sad. Don't, you need to do this. And everyone tries to fix them. But their soul might be calling to feel the void, to feel the lonely, to feel, right? I'm not saying we're not going out and helping people who are lonely, but there are those people that they've chosen a life that pushes people away. They've chosen a life to feel maybe feel that loneliness or feel being pulled out of it, right? Like there's so many things that we kind of create contracts and deals and agreements for in our lives. And you can see all of that in your Akashic Records.
And so why would somebody do that? Why would somebody choose a life that's tragically difficult or painful or traumatic.
Yeah. Well, we got to remember the soul, when it's not incarnated, we want to feel when we get incarnated into human, all of it, not just the good stuff. It's like they want to feel all of the elements of being human. And to be human is to grieve and to feel pain and to feel happiness and to feel loneliness and to feel joy and to feel laughter, right? All of that is part of the human experience. In the Akashic Records, there's not, so when they talk about karma, like say in like paganism or something, karma, do bad, come back bad, do good, come back good kind of thing.
Like Buddhism too, yeah.
Yeah, karma is a little different in the Akashic Records. You have to redefine karma as it's different in yoga and yoga nidra. Karma is just an energy, like if you almost think of like karma as being a river, right? And our bodies as the riverbed, the energy that and of the choices we've made just create these deep riverbed grooves in our lives. So it makes it much easier to choose that way again. Right. So like if I've made the choice to smoke my entire life, all of a sudden that groove, that riverbed is real deep within me. And it's really easy, even if I've quit for 6 months, to pick up another cigarette. Because it's like, well, right. So all like there's these grooves of energetic choices that we've made. It's not that it's going to cause it to be worse or bring back times 3, anything of that nature for this kind of karma. But we have that karma within our life, but we also have that style of samskara karma along all of our lives. So you think about all the energetic choices you make in one life, right? And you can handle that. But when you start thinking about throughout your life from the time your soul was born that you might have some scars and something like that, right? Like for me, it might have been the sexual traumas and the unworthiness or the undeservingness or the whatever it be that I was working on, right? That go across lifetimes that we have to shift if we want to be in a different place, right? We can shift it. We have absolute ability to go in and shift these things and make new choices.
Right.
But yeah.
But then I always wonder why there's this forgetting. If going back and getting this information and retrieving it is helpful and can help us grow and evolve, then why did we forget it in the first place?
Oh, you mean when we came into the human incarnation? Well, like I said, we know it when we're a soul. So if you think of it like that, like you're gathering, just when you go into the human life, it's just we're here to feel certain things. And it might be that our soul is like, I don't want you to remember. I want you to experience it a different way. I want you to experience it a different way. I had to go through this because my daughter, who's just going on 15 now, when she was 10, her best friend had neuroblastoma and we watched her suffer and die. And she was the most beautiful, amazing girl on the planet, like just awesome, amazing. And we watched her basically dwindle for many years. And it was her best friend. She was like family to us. And, when that happens, you go, why would any soul want to come in and experience that? Why would any soul? The pain that she went through, but the joy this kid brought to everybody around her. She is remembered by everyone, even, I'm sure she will for decades to be gone forward. Right. And I've seen her in my Akashic Records many times. And she's always playing. She's always moving and gathering. And so, she came here for that. She's not in it anymore, but it's so sad when you're the person losing them. And you're the person and you watch them suffer so greatly.
Yeah. So is the idea that we just keep coming back?
I think there are points at which we do not come back. It's not like a forever infinity loop.
Yeah.
And I think we choose when to not come back and come back when we learn, when we figured out what we've needed. We maybe ascend, align, we create to the next level for ourselves.
So let's talk about how we get to that place of being able to access our Akashic Records, because you're able to do that for other people, but you're saying that everyone can do that for themselves.
Absolutely. Everyone can do it.
And so how do they do that for themselves?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is you have to develop a relationship with your body and your clair abilities.
Mhm.
So if you are already pretty good with like understanding your intuition and your like, what clair abilities you have, that sense of feeling where you might all of a sudden your stomach might hurt, your heart might beat, or you might feel the chills, or you might get warm, or you might get cold, those kind of things. That's like a clairsentience. Of the visual where you maybe see things like creatives. I was telling you before, artists are often very clairvoyant,
Mhm.
but they don't think it because they think it's their imagination. And I was one of those people because I've been an artist for a very long time. And anytime I would go into meditation, I would see things. And I remember I went to my Akashic Records teacher. I'm like, are you sure I'm not imagining this? Because I've been doing this my whole life. I'm really good at imagining. And she's like,
Mhm.
you've been clairvoyant your whole life. Because it happens instantaneously. It's not like I have any thought. It just all of a sudden comes in and it like moves.
Yeah.
So a lot of artists actually already have clairvoyance and they just don't consider it that. They consider it their creativity, right?
Mhm.
And then you have people who hear things, right? There's all these different abilities that you can have. We can have all of them. We can all tap into each one of them, but we have stronger ones and we have weaker ones. And of course, you can work on any of those. So the first thing you have to do is really be able to quiet your body, balance your nervous system,
Mhm.
and find stillness and quiet inside. Because how are you supposed to hear where these worlds meet if you are too busy
Yeah.
worrying about the past, present, or future, right?
Right.
So that's the first thing people have to do is just learn how to really calm down and listen and start to know your yes or no questions. Because when I said before the Akashic Records, you tunnel in. You need to
Mhm.
know what a yes and a no is in your body. I find my yeses and nos come through clairsentience. I feel like either an expansion up or like a contraction down, or I'll feel like the chills that'll go up the side of my head or my
Yep.
arms. But when a no happens, I feel like a right, like goes
Yeah.
down into my gut. So you just have to know for yourself. That doesn't mean that every yes is expansive and every no is contractive. Because some people I know, their yes is like the whoop, there it is, not in my stomach, right? Some people, that's their yes.
Right.
So you have to get quiet. And then you have to just ask questions that are yes or no that you know the answer to. Ask your spirits, your spirit guides, your angels, your guardians, your masters and mentors, and ask them, even ancestors, to come in and can you show me what a yes looks like? Can you show me what a no feels like?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have to like be consistent. You have to start asking yes or no questions to really feel into it. And then once you have that, you can go into the records and you can tunnel in, right? You know how to
Mhm.
ask the questions. You know how to get the yes or no.
Mhm.
And it does have a lot of trust. It's trust the process. The more you do it,
Yeah. Yeah.
the more clear your channel gets. The more you do it, the more clear
Yeah.
you are when you actually go into the records. I know, at first it's the first few times you almost feel silly and you're like, what am I doing? I'm just imagining this.
Yeah.
I'm creating this. And the more and more you do it, the more clear you become. So,
Yeah.
and then once you have your yes or no, you can easily find guided meditations going into the Akashic Records, but also, some people bring them in different ways. So when I first experienced the Akashic Records the first time, I was just brought into a meditation where they asked me to find my guide and ask my guide to take me in. And that was all that was guided in the meditation.
Mhm.
I just had to find my guide and my guide brought me there. And
What did it look like?
when I first went, it was like this bohemian room. It was like, so many layers and fabrics and textures, but it was very much like a living room, not a library. It was like a really
Okay.
comfy chair. It was a very safe place for me at the time. And as I've been in the records, my space has changed a lot. And I found different rooms to go and to move into. So
Mhm.
I've also been in meditations where you go into the Akashic Records by walking into a house or some people walk you into a library. Some people will have you find a book and open the book,
Okay.
right? Like that's your book.
I heard there's always a keeper of the records. Is that true?
Yeah. So when I started learning, we refer to it as Lord of the Akashic Records.
Mhm.
But now they've kind of switched it. I'm more comfortable with Lord of the Akashic Records because I've been doing it for so long.
Mhm.
But Keepers of the Akashic Records is how they're referred to in the mantras that I use. So yeah, there you will, but you can have a guide you there.
But the keepers can always look different, correct?
Yes, and which guide takes you there? can look
Right.
different. And to be honest, when I've gone in the records, I speak with the Lord of the Akashic Records, but I've never seen.
Okay. Are you pulling books? Are they actually
Totally
pulling
different.
records?
Yeah. So here's this is so interesting. So when I first went in, I was first guided into the Akashic Records, I was in this like living room, and there were books there, and my instinct was to go touch the spines of the books.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not have like a keeper of the Akashic Records there. The guide left me there and
Mm-hmm.
stayed outside, and I was just allowed in the room, so there was nothing there. But I wasn't trying to change contracts, and my intention was just to experience my Akashic Records, right? When I work in the Akashic Records and I'm working on contracts, transmuting contracts, deals and agreements, transmuting belief systems, if I'm untethering, if I'm doing any work with the mantras, then I am directly Lord of the Akashic Records. Like I am directly connecting and contacting. But when I went in for this first one, I just went in, and it was a very safe place. I then later on was guided by my shaman teacher into the Akashic Records in a different way. And we went in through a crystal castle, which is another way that's pretty popular to go into your Akashic Records, right? When I went into my crystal castle, there were no books anywhere, like nowhere. There was a big fountain in the center. And what I did find was doors, and each doorway would open to something different, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
instead of there, you had the books, and then I had the doorway. And I found since then a room where there is a book, but it doesn't actually turn pages. It shows me like projections on the white page that's open to it. So it's different for everyone. There's no like, this is how you experience it. I know people who go in and they are handed books, or they pick up books and they flip through books. I've never really truly experienced it that way.
Okay. Yeah.
I experience it through my clair abilities, and I
Mm-hmm.
experience it when I first go in. If my intention is to go into the Akashic Records, sometimes I still go through the crystal castle because I just love how the circus feel of it there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like when I'm in the records, once I open a door in the crystal castle, then I'm right into my clairvoyance and my clairsentience. I'm no longer there. I'm kind of within the dimension of my records. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know it sounds a
Mm-hmm.
little crazy.
Yeah. Well, how do you deal with, I'm slowly starting to figure out my abilities. And I think when you were saying ask yes or no questions that you know the answer to, that never occurred to me because I've been doing shamanic journeys like without plant medicine, doing drumming in and things like that. And I've had these experiences and I've discovered that my way of gathering information is a yes, I get chills all over my body. And then nothing really happens with a no. And then sometimes I'll get like little flashes and visions. But I'm not clear, like, I'm not clear if it's me that I'm seeing or if it's a guide that I'm seeing. And then my yeses and nos aren't super, super clear.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll feel heat and cold, but I don't even know what that means. So like for somebody that's like me, and I have a strong meditation practice, but it's not that easy to go into these spaces for me.
Yeah.
How do I develop that and trust it? And my logical mind gets in the way all the time.
Yeah.
Very, very logical mind. So how do I
Yeah.
work with that and develop these skills?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you probably have to deal with the mind first, because when your mind is putting all the questions, it's just like for me when I was realizing that I was clairvoyant, and it was actually like visions that were coming through, and not just my creative mind that's just like, oh, I'm bored, I'm going to give you some pictures. That's what I really thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had to get over that hump. And how I got over that hump was I got really curious, and I almost tried to stump myself. And I would almost, every time I started to have a vision, I would like, I'd almost like, I want to say, I didn't actually, but it was almost like a marker in a little pad somewhere. Like, how long did that take? How long did that take? And then I would really quickly like write the feeling that I had. And then I would really quickly write the image, because visions can come really fast. So you can easily lose one in the way. So for you, if you're having visions, it's okay in the middle of being in the records to open your eyes and write it down, because you're still in the records. You haven't closed them, right? So immediately write it down. So I would try to stump myself. And then I would like when I would go in and I would do my own I would go into my own records and ask very poignant questions, or ones that were tunneled in.
Well, but before you go further, can you give some good questions?
Yeah, well, it depends on what your intention is going in. So really a great intention just to begin with is to experience your Akashic records. So if you're
Right.
just going in to experience your Akashic
Mm-hmm.
records, just I want to feel my Akashic record. I want to experience it, not going in for anything much more. Ask your guide to come in, right? And while you're there, you can just start to look at all the details, right? Look at the space you're in. When you find yourself in the space, just look around and notice all the little, nothing is there by accident. There's nothing there that does not have meaning. So you can look around and you can get curious. And then you can start asking questions about what you see. And so if you get curious about, well, wow, there's a stairway to the right. Where does that stairway lead? How long has that stairway been there? Can I go up the stairs? Would it be scary if I go up the stairs? And just yes or no questions, just like
Mm-hmm.
playing it. And, I find that if you're already questioning your yes or no, for the most part, like needing to really like put some extra energy behind your trust in yourself. So like maybe for you, like if you're
Mm-hmm.
really like not even going into the Akashic records yet, but if you're feeling like your mind is stopping you from feeling those yes or no, maybe commit yourself to like 1 or 2 hours a day where you just 100% follow your intuition. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you take an hour out of every day where you ask yourself, should I eat this ice cream? Should I go for a walk? And literally let your yeses and nos define what you do for that half hour or hour
Yeah.
and see how that turns out for you to kind of deal with the mind piece of that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
just like, so because it'll give you real time feedback of when I
Yeah.
listen to it. Does it
Mm-hmm.
work out for me? What did I, when I listen to it, how does it, and then the more you use it, the more strong it becomes too. It's like a
Right.
muscle. You tone that muscle. And then when
Mm-hmm.
you start to develop a little bit more trust in yourself, then you could go into your records anytime and just get curious.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can go in and if you really feel that that's there, like you have that real nice trust happening and you go into your records, then you can really get down and dirty with your records. Like
Mm-hmm.
really ask the questions. Okay, what belief
Mm-hmm.
system's holding me back? Where is that belief system rooted? What past life is it rooted in? Can you show me the beginning? How can I rewrite this? How can I transmute this?
Yeah.
What are ways in which I can use that? What ways in my life today can I change that? How do I change that karma, that samskara? What new samskara has to be created? What action can I take now? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you can get down and dirty if you're really feeling. And then I asked questions that weren't yes or no. I asked a lot of what, because I will get visions. I will get like, okay, this is what I need
Mm-hmm.
to do. Or I'll have a knowing. I'll just know, oh, wow. And sometimes that's the hardest to trust when you just know it. Because you're
Mm-hmm.
like, what?
Right.
Stop. Did I just make that up? Because that's the hard part. We are taught not to trust ourselves. We're
Mm-hmm.
taught so deeply not to trust ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And really, but the Akashic records are ours. They're our information. It belongs to us. One of the things I would say, I probably should have said this earlier, is if you are going to go into your records, you should absolutely banish beforehand. And I'm not saying that there's like negative spirits everywhere, but there's like definitely energy that doesn't need to be with you in your Akashic records, that it's for you, but it's
Yeah.
not like for you.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that
So,
up because you mentioned something about how you go and you clear the lake first. So can you talk a little bit about that?
well, I have a banishment mantra. I clear the lake, which is something that I do in my soul shamanism work, which is like going into our spirit lake, going in and clearing it of anything that's not me or mine. And it's literally like I vision myself in my spirit lake. I vision myself almost like a Wonder Woman superhero, like get out, done, go. And I ask for the help of my highest, most aligned divine help to help me clear it. But whenever I go into the Akashic records, I use the mantra from the records that was channeled down from the records. And that's, so whatever banishing you feel like you need to do, I always light Palo Santo or sage. I always open up at the end of my records. When I'm in someone else's records, I wash my hands and my wrists with cold water. Like I respect the idea
Mm-hmm.
that I'm going into someone's records or I'm into my records, that this is
Mm-hmm.
a sacred space and
Mm-hmm.
it's beautiful. And when you should respect when you go into your own and clear the space, whether it be sage, Palo Santo, whatever you
Mm-hmm.
do for your own banishing, for you could simply go into yourself, imagine a door opening in your heart clearing out your heart of anything that it no longer needs right now, only for its highest and best good. Close the heart and then move in, right? Something like that would work. Or I do a literal say out loud like banishment in my entire house because I have too many people in my house and they all come with stuff. But it's not, I don't believe in like, I'm not really a demon person or anything like that. For me, it's just, I just want the guides that and the guardians that are the highest for me to work with me in my records. I mean, I'll take your help at other times, but when I'm in my records in that energetic field, I want like the 95% for me, guides and guardians.
Yeah. So when you talked earlier about closing the records, how do you close them?
Yeah. So when you go into the records and you're guided in, generally you ask a guide to bring you. And I don't, I haven't gone that way in such a long time. But when I guide, you can actually say to yourself that you're opening, or you can ask to open your records. You can like use the mantra. And then when you're closing your records, I use a mantra. Like, I thank you for your wisdom, insight, knowledge, that I've received today. And it's really simple. The records are now closed. The records are now closed. The records are now closed. So that's like a mantra that was channeled down, and it's a whole big thing, but it's channeled down from the Akashic Records for the purpose of going into other people's records. So, and some people have different mantras depending on who they've learned from, but they're really all very similar, with just a few words changed, and they do get updated. So the mantras used in the Akashic Records by people who go into the records for others, they do get updated. So when you're leaving, I feel like the intention, because even when I go into my records, sometimes it's just the intention of leaving. If I'm not working with somebody else, if I'm just working alone, I might just leave the Crystal Castle. I might just leave the room because that's where my records are, right? So if you're in a guided meditation and you enter a room, then you just leave the room, right? So, but when I'm working with someone else, I open and close through mantra.
Okay. Yeah. Can you talk about soul contracts and how, because I've heard of other people going into somebody else's Akashic records and then breaking soul contracts?
Yeah. Well, we call them transmuting. And you can do a few things with soul contracts. So when we're a soul not incarnated, we kind of talked about it before, we might find people, we might want to learn certain lessons, feel certain things, have a certain experience, right? So we might find other souls to help us do that. And when we do that, we go into contract with them when we're not incarnated. That's a soul contract. And then, so like I think I might have gave you this example last time we talked. You might have two people who want to experience unconditional love, right? And so they create a soul contract. They get into this life, they get incarnated, but we have free will in this life. We have free will when we're incarnated. We can do whatever we want. And we may not know that our soul is contracted to, we're just kind of feeling through what we want to do, right? So two people might have this contract, but by the time they find each other, one of them's married with 3 kids and happily married at that, right? And then this person's over here going, but I just don't feel like I can find my soul mate. Like, I don't know where they are, or they might be obsessed with that person, or they may just be depressed, right? And it may not have anything to do with not being able to find anyone. It just might be that their energy is tied to this person that's no longer able to do it because their free will kind of took over. So in those cases, and it's not every case, but it is a lot of times I find soul contracts that like, wow, and it just releases the energy. You can go in the Akashic Records and transmute it, but you can also go in the records and rewrite it. It's a mantra again. You basically ask the Lord of the Akashic Records to transmute it. Once you go into the records and you see the contract, you have to know a little bit about it. So you might go in this. You might start going into the records with somebody saying, I can't find anyone. Right? I just don't know where my love is. Like, what happened? I don't know. I'm 40 something years old, right? And you go into the records and you're tunneling in with that question. And you might end up at a place where, oh, well, there's a soul contract. I wonder, well, you have to learn. You wanted to feel unconditional love. Oh, well, where were you missing unconditional love in your past lives? Like, let's see where this began. And then once you find that, you just kind of have to tunnel in so you really understand it. And then once you do, you offer up all the information that was given to transmute that contract. And it's that easy. You can also rewrite. So I should say this, before you transmute a contract, you have to know that that person doesn't necessarily leave your life, because I've transmuted contracts with my kids. right? And they're still in my life. Like
Right.
what it does is almost think of it like an energetic cord. Like it just keeps you, or pressure, maybe even pressure is a better thing, like energetic pressure. Like, you need to find this, right? It just releases the pressure. You can still have that same relationship, but it just releases the pressure from it. So people don't necessarily, like, people are afraid to, some people might be afraid to transmute a contract with their husband or wife, right? But they're not going to leave because you did that. They're still in your life. It takes the energetic pressure off. Yeah. And so you can also rewrite a contract. So say a contract's real messy. Maybe like you're in there and like it was really, maybe you called in something that you really don't want to experience, but you have this person in your life. You can rewrite the contract. You can redesign it. And in that process in the records is a little more in depth because you actually have to, when I've done rewriting of contracts, we've gone into like affirmations and mantras around that we write into the records. We write back into the belief systems, and then we rewrite and reimagine the contract. Yeah. And when I say rewriting, I'm not literally like writing or anything. We're working with the energy, working with the keepers of the Akashic Records to do that work. Yeah. And then also along the lines of contracts or deals and agreements, which are made in this human life while we're incarnated. And then you have belief systems. So you can work with all of those in the Akashic Records.
With your belief systems.
Yeah, you can oh, it's the best. You can totally transmute belief systems.
So how do you do that? I have a belief system I'd like to transmute.
Yeah. So when I was learning and training, I spent a lot of time in belief systems. And you'll find that a lot of them actually do connect back to contracts and back to past lives and back to tethering, back to where your energy was in many, many lives previous. But you can go in and you can find the roots of belief systems. So like, if we have a belief system in this life but it's rooted like 20 lives ago, right? What if it's rooted in like other lives and you just pick at this one, you're like not getting the roots, right? So it just easily comes back. Yeah. So when you go in and you're looking at belief systems with an Akashic Records guide, you can look for the root cause of it, the beginning of it. When did it start? Why did it happen? You can even rewrite those past lives if you want to work with those past lives in different ways. And you can transmute the belief system from the very first. Well, actually, I wouldn't transmute from the first. I would go to that first life that caused it, and I would pull my energy out from it, and I might even like play around with that life a little bit just to give what I needed. And then I would transmute the belief system after that life. And now when you transmute a belief system, it doesn't mean that it's gone forever in your life. But what it does mean is the moment it's transmuted, it has no hold over you. And then often it's just like anything when you're working in this life. Often you'll be given something to challenge you because what you need to do now is to rewrite your record. So just like we're talking about like a samskara, when you have an energetic choice that happens over and over again, maybe it was written 100 times on a blackboard. We just erased that whole blackboard. But for your new belief systems to take place, you have to write them like 100 times.
You have to recreate a new
right?
path.
You're recreating a new samskara. So it is much easier to move into a new belief system after transmuting it from your records. It is done and clear at that moment. But then the next time you're tested and you're like like you're questioned to see what that new belief system is going to be. Are you going to go back? Or are you going to create a new one? You have to remember to make that choice. Yeah. Super cool work. Belief system work in the records is amazing. And oftentimes when you're in there, you'll get mantras that are like so ancient in your soul life that is like, they're so powerful.
You'll get mantras in that.
Yeah. Whenever I'm in the records and I'm working belief systems, I always ask, what can we do in this life to solidify this new belief system? And oftentimes we'll get mantras and affirmations, but they connect deep to your soul. So they're ones that resonate in life across lifetimes for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll work with the future self for the mantras, especially if the future lives are in a place where you want to be or where you want to connect to. We can even like have them brought down. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I'm curious about the future lives. That's even more complicated in my head.
Yeah, linearly, it's like, what?
Yes, exactly.
You're like, what does that mean? Well, have you ever done a meditation where you've just like meditated on your future self?
Yes.
I mean, that's very similar. You know, like you're skipping time, you're going ahead, right? We just think of it instead of the time in one lifetime going to the next lifetime.
What would be the reason that somebody would go in to a future Akashic record?
Oh, well, you can go in just to be curious about your future lives because they
Yeah.
all feed into your present, right? So you can go to your future life to learn things to bring into this life. You
Yeah.
can go into a future life to gather information for this life. You could even go just to be interested and inspired in different way. Maybe you're feeling like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Well,
Yeah.
go into one of your future lives and see what you're up to. Like maybe
Yeah.
there's something of interest there. Maybe you want to start planting the seeds, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. This is so vast and complicated and fun and interesting.
I don't know if I said this before, but when you are in your own records, you are healing yourself.
Mm.
Energetically, you're healing yourself. A lot of people go just to be in their records for
Yeah.
Reiki healing from the angels and their spirit team. Just being in that space will heal you.
Yeah.
So they go in just for that. So as you're in the records, even if you're not working on it, your clair abilities are being heightened and fine-tuned and all of that. So they can shift. And
Yeah.
then just have an intention. Why am I going? Am I going for healing? Am I going to just get curious? Am I going because I just can't? There's this one thing that keeps happening in my life and I have no reason why. I don't know why it keeps happening, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you're going, have that intention. Know your yes or no. And
Mm-hmm.
then just get curious.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
know?
practice.
Yeah. You know, it doesn't
Yeah.
happen all at once. It took me a while to really settle into
Mm-hmm.
like that whole trusting that when I have a vision that it actually is a vision or it is actually like a piece of
Yeah.
clairvoyance that's coming through. It took me a long time.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
you know, the more you do it, the more you trust it. And the more
Yeah.
that you trust it, the more it shows up for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jocelyn, for this conversation. And I'm wondering if you can share like how people can contact you and all the different things that you offer. I know you have a lot of offering.
Yeah, yeah. So my website is jocelynbates.net. And on there, I offer my soul sessions, which are Akashic Records sessions, and human design readings, and soul art journeys, which are kind of like shamanic journeys. And then I have, I'm on Insight Timer. So if you find me on Insight Timer, I'm Jocelyn Bates. And I currently have an intention workshop there. And I'm just put up an automatic writing workshop or course. And I think I'm going to be putting up an Akashic Records course, just gently
Awesome.
jumping into the Akashic Records. So if you like follow me there, you know, I have all kinds of yoga nidras, and because I'm also a yoga nidra guide, so yoga nidras, and I do lots of live events on there. Yeah, I'm also on Substack, Jocelyn Bates there.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time and for sharing and for exploring this topic with me and for your clarity on it. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nickyyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day.